What's up, everybody? So this video is going to be about the new Infestation team. They are really good. They seem to be the Underworld equivalent for war defense, where Underworld was for offense. So this is going to be a very tricky team. Fortunately, it does have some built-in counters, so it's not going to break the war meta. I think you're still going to catch up some victories here and there. We got a hybrid that we use against it. We do have a hard counter in-game, and I think this is good. This is kind of the war defense type we like to see released, because it's really just for the higher end people, and most of the people can completely discount this and not watch this video, and I probably shouldn't have said that. Enjoy the video. Bye. Alright, the next matchup I want to show is going to be the Underworld team. Now, the Underworld team is basically just a stand-in to show you what's going to happen to all teams that rely on controllers because of Big Time's passive, basically reducing the speed bar that they generate, I believe, by 50%. So what's going to happen now is we're going to see Taskmaster give only 350 speed instead of his usual 700. And that allows Big Time to go first, and from there, they just never get to catch up. With the energy steal also coming from the Big Time, we don't get to do anything. Like, it would be nice if Taskmaster could use his ultimate, but he has offense down now because his offense up got flipped, and the entire team has immunity, so he's not going to blind anybody. So what ends up happening is we fall further and further and further behind. And with your summons, Yellow Jacket can get like resets with his ultimate, double tap you. It's just gigantic damage. And yeah, so Underworld's not going to work. Omega Red is another controller that you're not going to want to bring in there. The Eternals, that's another controller there with Cersei. There's just so many of them. So many of them. All right, so let's continue on. Next fight. Alright, the next team that people were theorizing would beat this is the Infinity Watch team. Now, this was because of the safeguard and immunity and defense up on spawn. So obviously, Infinity Watch just in a really good state as far as protecting themselves off rip, which is what Infestation really pries away from teams, right? Takes their opening away from them. So Big Time uses his ultimate. Now, it's not going to peel anything, it's not giving any debuffs, but it steals energy. So we're not able to use the dodge effect from the Nebula. And what that means is that all the abilities, the Yellow Jacket, the Ant-Man, the Swarm, everything's going to land, and we just take an incredible amount of damage. And don't forget, Yellow Jacket Ultimate also applies the special because of the Big Time passive, or rather the Yellow Jacket passive that needs Big Time. So he's able to kill people, I believe, through Death Proof here. And we're not going to see it. He takes out my Nebula's first life. That's kind of fortuitous, right? Like, if he had taken out the Phyla-Vel, that would be problems. And also, there is the defense mechanism where they drop into stealth at 50%. That does you a lot of disservice when you're trying to line up a kill with Gamora. Now, I should have left Ant-Man like that and tried to one-shot him with Gamora, but it just wasn't meant to be. Now, one thing I want to mention is this was a insane punch-up, even though it's war practice. Okay, so this is like a 300k team with a 2-year-old team versus the new Apex war defense team, if you will. And it didn't instantly end. So I do see a world where people can invest in Infinity Watch to take out these baby Infestation teams that have smaller Big Times and smaller Yellow Jackets and Ant-Mans and be okay. And I think that's actually a really good investment for people, because Infinity Watch, they're just kind of the team that keeps on giving. They keep popping back up simply because of that opening. In Crucible, they're kind of always going to be annoying because of that defensive start. It's going to pull an Apocalypse or a Dorm. Now, the window on that investment still maintaining value, hard to say, really hard to say. But yeah, so we get ripped apart here, but this, again, 300k punch-up, played a little bit sloppily. So this could be a thing, but probably not something you're going to want to lean into if you're in a super high-end competitive alliance. But we got Ant-Man out, so count it. So the second last team I'm going to show you is going to be the Darkhold team. Now, this is a punch across. There's a lot that goes against Darkhold. Now, we're talking about controllers earlier with the Big Time, and don't forget that Morgan is indeed a controller. So when she's giving 10% speed on every turn to her team, that's cut in half to now be 5% speed, which is a huge difference. But more than that, it's the opening from Big Time that absolutely crushes this team. Once again, the ultimate is going to apply blind to the 2 highest speed targets. That's going to be your Morgan and your Heartless. Normally, you would rely on that cursed 100% resistance that Morgan is giving to her team. But Big Time Ultimate has 1000% focus. So it's just so likely to land. Also with the energy steal, you're not going to be able to ult anyway. And you come into a world of pain. You can't rewind with the Heartless, and you fall so quickly. Now, it was brought up in chat, what about using Dormammu with your Darkhold? I didn't test that. I unfortunately can't get back on the playtest at this point. I also don't think it would matter much, because there's so many revive cancels coming out from Ant-Man, and because your first turn is just absolutely cursed, I don't see it really working out. And I imagine that's something that they tested pretty stringently. So there you go. We lost Agatha. Finally, Morgan's going to get to go. We got some good buff steals, but Morgan unfortunately gets targeted by the special of Yellow Jacket. And again, that is a 30% base damage, and this team just rips Darkhold apart. So I don't think Darkhold's going to be a good matchup here unless you're doing very substantial punch downs, especially in live war. So here we go with the Gamma vs Infestation on about an 80k punch up. This is the old Apex War team. Now we have Knowhere, obviously. And this matchup, I thought it should work really good. But there are some key moments that there is a little bit of RNG, right? So we got to rewind the big time. This is going to allow our Abomination to go before him, because Red Hulk, I just learned today, actually does 30% rewind, not 10%. I thought the rewind only happened once. Here's a moment of RNG. The Abomination can actually peel off the immunity. And if he peels off the immunity, all you need to do is stun the big time, and then this match is over. You instantly win. But we didn't get that, and I mean, that's a 33% RNG chance. We don't want to bank on that anyway, so it's kind of good that we didn't see it. But with all the energy steal, we do get kind of messed up a little bit. So Braun can no longer do his heal and cleanse, and maybe a trauma, so we couldn't anyway. Red Hulk won't be able to land his ultimate because the blind from Big Time goes to the 2 enemies with the highest speed. That's going to be Red Hulk. But just by sheer damage, Gamma does seem to be able to pull ahead of this. Now, I did feel like we were in trouble. I threw the ult even though we were blinded because I was worried Red Hulk might die, and I wanted to get that battlefield effect out there. And worst case scenario, I'm going to be able to use the special next turn anyway, and since that's a 30% rewind, that's just such a valuable ability. Like, I do love flipping buffs with the ultimate, but just having the battlefield effect out and then also being able to do a Terminator rewind felt like the better mechanical decisions. And there you go. There goes Big Time, and there goes Black Widow, and then we get it done. So yeah, Gamma can get it done. I think this is good. If people have half built up Infestation teams, I think you're going to see people's, Apocalypse built Gammas just absolutely walk over them, and that's a good thing. And then hopefully that'll help ease up the strain on war at lower levels. People will be less likely to put their Gamma on there if they need it to beat up this Infestation team. All right, let's go ahead, head to another fight. All right, here's a little hybrid that I came up with that actually won it 20 out of 20 times. There's some interesting mechanics at play here. I'm really pushing my alliance to let me use Kestrel on offense, so I like this. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. There's no Knowhere in this footage. So I unfortunately had my Knowhere team stripped from me on the playtest by accident. And then by the time I got it back, my app stopped working, and I never had time to follow up and then get that app fixed so I can get in there. But we're going to do a little breakdown on why Knowhere demolishes this team after we show this fight. But I like this hybrid, and I think what it does, it opens up an interesting trifecta, because the 3 top war defensive teams now will be Darkhold, Gamma, and this new Infestation. And where you put Apocalypse is going to change a lot of things, right? Underworld is seemingly finding its way on defense in some cases as well, which is an interesting switch in there, because if that's the case, then you need to find something else to beat the regular Darkholds. And then, of course, we have Black Order, which is just War Dogs. Okay, so let's watch this fight. I thought it was very interesting. There's a couple moments that you might think are RNG, but for me, in all of my testing, it always played out one identical way. But some people win the lottery, so maybe I won the awkward RNG lottery here. So Knowhere is very key here. Now I'll probably bring up my Knowhere to 95 just for this. We use a special on Yellow Jacket, and we can almost make our Knowhere a skirmisher, so there's always a vulnerable. I'll use the special from Kang here. This is a mistake. You should use the basic, because what's going to happen next is Big Time is actually going to come, and he's going to flip that offense up anyway, so it's completely wasted. Should just use the basic. The speed bar would have been a lot better. Again, I can't get back on the playtest to show you proper turn order. So then we get to flip all their stuff. All our stuff gets flipped, and here is an important thing to look at. So Big Time's ultimate puts the blinds on the characters with the 2 highest speeds. That is always going to be Kang, and for me, it always chose 2099. Now, 2099 and Spider Weaver actually have identical speeds at 127, but it always went on 2099. I'm not sure if it's because he spawns with speed up or what the case might be. However, I would say that even if Weaver does get blind, just her sheer charges would make this work. And then Kestrel will not get blind because she's only at 125, so her pings will still be popping off. It's unfortunate she has the offense down, but her pings still do damage, and we eventually get through it. So let's go ahead and watch how this plays out. The stun helps. Obviously, the damage from Weaver helps too. If you really wanted to make sure you get a kill, you could also use the Weaver special there, because that's unavoidable, right? And that'll absolutely rip people apart. So that's another option, but then you're missing out on 1 charge. So if you are going to do that, you want to make sure it's going to kill the Ant-Man and turn it into a 3v5, because then you're not actually having to deal with all that damage. You see, we only use 1 charge from Weaver. I think we use 1 more, but even this Big Time, and he's a big time. He's like gear tier 17. I believe he's 5 red, 7 yellow, 95 gear tier 17. His damage just isn't what you're worried about on the team. What you're worried about on this team is the Yellow Jacket and the Ant-Man, which is really funny, but also really cool. Alright, so there goes the Weaver special, unavoidable. So the dodges don't really matter. Swarm's finally doing his damage, and yeah, so if we inverted when we did the abilities on the Weaver, if we did the special first, then the ultimate, the way it's playing out currently with the speed stats all over the place, it wouldn't have made a difference. So this is great. I really like this team. It may not be necessary because it's pulling a lot, right? Like Tangled Web can kind of do their own thing, Kang can do his own thing, and Kestrel could obviously be used on defense. But I just really like the fact that I could beat it with not a cookie cutter team. So we're seeing in the chat, Big Time Dud. I think this team is actually really good, and you got to remember this is war practice, so I wouldn't swear by any of this footage. I'm a fan of this team. I'm a fan of this type of release for war defense. And you got to remember, like we've seen playtest footage before where Knowhere looked insanely better than what they are, and Undying kind of didn't feel as good as they clearly are. They're an amazing team. So this is playtest footage. Take it with a grain of salt. Know that this team will probably be a mandatory team for the people that are in the high-end wars, and who knows if it's going to be needed for the next Scourge. I kind of feel like it might be, but I don't have any insider info. All right, let's go talk about the Knowhere team, and we'll wrap this video up. All right, actually, let's do a little bit more, guys. Let's talk about the Knowhere team and why the Knowhere team is probably going to slap the Infestation team. And not probably, it is going to slap the Infestation team. And it comes down to 1 man and 1 ability alone, and that is Nova. So why does Nova do it? Well, first, let's look at Nova's tags. He is a blaster. That means he is not affected speed bar wise by the Big Time special. The next thing we need to look at is the special from Nova. Sorry, the passive from Big Time. The special from Nova. He attacks the primary target, flips defense up, and 2 grand in positive effects. That means he's going to be flipping everything on Big Time. He applies Disrupt and Heal Block, and he's going to apply Stun to the primary target. This is going to stun the Big Time, so you're not worried about his ability. Now, you could be concerned, well, hey, Black Widow is then going to go right after, and she's going to cleanse everything. Well, not in War. So in War, it's also going to apply trauma to the Big Time as well, so he is not going to be able to get out of it. So basically, this ability alone should completely cuck the Big Time, and then away you go. So can you skimp out on characters for Knowhere? And the answer is, well, yes and no. So you definitely want to have a big Thor, you want to have a big Nova, but you also need the other characters on the field. Now, this is very important in the Nova passive line. He's getting 15% extra speed from each Knowhere ally. So yeah, you need to have this up. He goes before, Nova goes before Red Hulk, which means he does go before Big Time. I thought that was a very important thing to bring up. I don't know if he goes before Widow, but it doesn't matter, because he's going to go before big time and flip everything and then stun. And then that's all she wrote. So yeah, Knowhere should absolutely crush this team. If you wanted to know who you should invest in to make sure that that is a constant reality to you, I would say Nova, Thor, Cosmo, and then a little bit into Star-Lord and Korg if you can swing it. But I imagine that the Knowhere team is actually going to do pretty substantial punch-ups into Infestation as long as your Nova's big. Alright guys, now that is the end of the video. Have yourself a wonderful day.
That's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Stay happy, healthy, have fun, and I'll see you in the next one.